I'm sitting in my car outside my childhood home in Portland, Oregon, clutching a manila envelope with my father's death certificate inside. The rain is pounding against my windshield, and honestly, it matches exactly how I'm feeling inside. It's been 3 months since Dad passed away from cancer, and tonight Mom called saying she needed to discuss important family matters. I should mention, I'm Sarah Mitchell, I'm 28, and I'm a registered nurse at OHSU Hospital. I've been supporting my parents financially for the past 2 years, especially after Dad got too sick to work at his auto repair shop. Between my nursing school loans and helping them with medical bills, I've been living paycheck to paycheck, but family comes first, right? Walking up to the house, I notice Mom's rose bushes look neglected. Dad always took care of those. The porch light is flickering, another thing on his never-ending honey-do list that will never get done now. Mom opens the door and she looks terrible. Her eyes are red and puffy, like she's been crying for hours. She's wearing that same navy cardigan she wears to every family event, and she can barely make eye contact with me. I made chicken pot pie, she says, trying to sound normal. Though I don't think either of us has much appetite tonight. The house feels so empty without Dad. His reading chair is exactly as he left it, his coffee mug still sitting on the side table. I can't believe Mom hasn't moved anything. It's like she's frozen in time. We sit down in the living room surrounded by decades of family photos. There's my college graduation, my brother Ryan's wedding, countless Christmas mornings when we were kids. Everything looks normal, but something in Mom's demeanor is setting off alarm bells in my head. I need to tell you something, Mom finally says, pulling out a thick legal document from the coffee table drawer. Your father changed his will 6 months before he died. My stomach drops. We had talked about this stuff years ago when Dad first got his estate planning done. The plan was simple. Mom gets the house, Ryan and I split everything else equally. Dad always said he wanted to be fair to both his children. Changed it how, I ask, though I'm already getting a sick feeling about where this is going. Mom's hands are shaking as she holds the document. Ryan came to us last spring. His restaurant was failing badly. He owed over $180,000 to suppliers. The bank was threatening to foreclose on his house, and Jessica was pregnant with their second child. I'm trying to process this. Ryan owns a small barbecue restaurant in Beaverton that's been struggling since COVID, but I had no idea things were that bad. He never mentioned it to me, but then again, Ryan and I haven't been close since he got married. Your father decided to leave everything to Ryan, Mom continues, and I swear my heart stops beating. The house, the savings, his portion of Mitchell's auto repair, all of it. He said Ryan needed it more, that you had your nursing career and were stable. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. Everything? Mom, what about you? What about me? I get to stay in the house until I die. Then it goes to Ryan, too. Sarah, your father thought he was doing the right thing. He said you'd understand. Understand? I'm 28 years old, drowning in student loan debt, working double shifts to pay my bills and help them with their expenses. And my father decided I don't deserve anything because I'm stable? Mom, I've been struggling too. I can hear my voice getting louder, but I can't help it. I'm still paying off nursing school. My rent is $1,800 a month for a tiny apartment, and I've been sending you guys $500 every month since Dad got sick. Mom starts crying. I tried to talk him out of it, sweetheart, but Ryan, he can be very persuasive. He'd come over every weekend with the grandkids, fixing things around the house. He made your father feel needed. That hurts. Really hurts. And I didn't? I was here every single day during Dad's chemo treatments. I took unpaid leave from work to drive him to appointments. I held his hand when he was scared about the surgery. Before Mom can answer, I hear a familiar sound. Ryan's lifted Ford F-150 pulling into the driveway. Of course he's here. Mom probably planned this whole ambush. Ryan walks in without knocking, like he owns the place. which I guess now he literally does. He's 31, still wearing his work clothes from the garage where he picks up side jobs when the restaurant isn't busy. He's got that easy confidence that always made him Dad's favorite, even when we were kids. "Hey, Sarah," he says, like this is just a normal family visit. "Mom said you wanted to talk about Dad's arrangements." I wanted to talk? I stare at him in disbelief. "Ryan, did you know about this? About Dad changing his will?" He has the decency to look uncomfortable at least. "Look, Sarah, it's not personal. Dad made a business decision. My family needed help, and you're doing fine on your own." Fine on my own? I stand up, my hands shaking with anger. "Ryan, I've been financially supporting our parents for 2 years. I missed mortgage payments on my condo to help pay for Dad's medical bills." "You have a condo?" Ryan looks surprised. "See? You're better off than you let on." I want to scream. "Yes, I have a tiny one-bedroom condo that I can barely afford, and I've been considering selling it because of all the money I've been sending to Mom and Dad." "Ryan, this isn't right," I say, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad always said he wanted to treat us equally. We're both his children." Ryan shrugs. "Things change, Sarah. I've got 2 kids to think about, a business to save. You don't have those responsibilities." The dismissive way he says, it makes my blood boil. Like my life doesn't matter because I chose to focus on my career instead of getting married and having kids right away. So that's it? I look between Mom and Ryan. 30 years of being part of this family and I get nothing because I don't have the right kind of problems? Mom is crying harder now. "Sarah, please don't be angry. We're still family." "Are we?" I grab my purse and head for the door. Because it feels like I just found out I'm not really part of this family at all. As I'm leaving, I hear Ryan say to Mom, "She'll get over it. Sarah's always been dramatic." Driving home through the Portland rain, I can't stop thinking about that comment. Dramatic. Like my hurt and shock over being completely cut out of my father's will is just me being emotional. By the time I get to my condo, I've made a decision. I'm not just going to get over it. If Dad really did change his will under pressure from Ryan, if there was any coercion or undue influence involved, then maybe this isn't as final as they think it is. I spend the rest of the night researching estate lawyers in Oregon. By morning, I have a list of 5 attorneys who specialize in will contests. My family might think I'm being dramatic, but they're about to find out just how serious I am about fighting for what's right. The next morning, I call in sick to work. I know it's not professional, but I can't focus on taking care of patients when my whole world has been turned upside down. Instead, I'm sitting in my tiny living room with my laptop, researching everything I can about contesting wills in Oregon. The more I read, the more convinced I become that something isn't right about Dad's sudden change of heart. According to what I'm finding online, there are several grounds for contesting a will: lack of testamentary capacity, undue influence, fraud, and improper execution. The one that keeps jumping out at me is undue influence. I remember the last few months of Dad's life so clearly. He was on heavy pain medication, often confused and disoriented. The chemotherapy had really taken a toll on his mental clarity, and Ryan was there constantly, always talking about his financial problems, always bringing up how much he needed help. My first appointment is with Margaret Chen, an estate attorney in downtown Portland. Her office is in one of those glass towers that always intimidated me, but her receptionist is kind, and Margaret herself puts me at ease immediately. "Tell me about your father's mental state in his final months," Margaret says, taking notes as I speak. I explain about the cancer, the medications, the confusion. There were days when he didn't recognize me at first. He'd ask me the same questions multiple times in a single conversation. And he was so worried about everyone, especially after Ryan started bringing up his financial problems. Margaret nods. "And when exactly did your father execute this new will?" I check the document Mom gave me. March 15th, 2023. That was right in the middle of his worst period with the chemo. He was hospitalized twice that month for complications. Who witnessed the signing? Looking at the paperwork, I see two names I don't recognize, plus Ryan's signature as a witness. I don't know these other two people, but Ryan witnessed it. Margaret raises an eyebrow. A beneficiary witnessed the will? That's problematic. In Oregon, that can potentially invalidate a bequest to that witness. My heart starts beating faster. Really? It's more complicated than that, but it's definitely something we can work with. Sarah, I want to be honest with you about what we're facing. Will contests are expensive, emotionally draining, and they tear families apart. Are you prepared for that? I think about Ryan calling me dramatic, about being dismissed and ignored. Ms. Chen, my family is already torn apart. I just want what's fair. She quotes me her retainer fee, $5,000 up front, with hourly rates after that. It's more money than I have in my savings account, but I agree to it anyway. I'll figure out how to pay for it. Over the next week, I start gathering evidence. I make copies of all Dad's medical records that I can access. I reach out to his doctors, his nurses, anyone who interacted with him during those final months. Dr. Patricia Williams, Dad's oncologist, agrees to meet with me at a coffee shop near the hospital. She's a small woman in her 50s who always had a gentle way with Dad during his treatments. Your father was struggling cognitively, she tells me, stirring her latte. The combination of the cancer, the chemotherapy, and the pain medications can significantly impact decision-making abilities. I remember being concerned about his mental clarity during several appointments. Concerned enough to document it? Let me check his file. She pulls out her phone and scrolls through what I assume are digital records. Yes, I made notes about potential cognitive impairment in February and March of 2023. I actually recommended that he avoid making any major decisions during that period. This is exactly what Margaret said we'd need to prove. I asked Dr. Williams if she'd be willing to testify or provide an affidavit about Dad's mental state. She hesitates. Sarah, I understand why you're doing this, but testifying in a family legal matter, it could complicate things professionally. I can see she wants to help, but is worried about getting involved. Dr. Williams, all I'm asking for is the truth about Dad's condition. If someone took advantage of him when he was vulnerable, don't you think that's wrong? She agrees to think about it. My next stop is Dad's auto repair shop. Mitchell's Auto Repair has been in our family for 23 years. Dad started it with his best friend, Tom Rodriguez, and they've been 50-50 partners ever since. Tom is working under the hood of an old Chevy when I arrive. He's a big guy, probably in his early 60s, with hands permanently stained black from years of engine work. When he sees me, his face breaks into a sad smile. Sarah, sweetheart, how are you holding up? I explain what I've discovered about the will, and Tom's expression shifts to anger. That's bullshit, he says bluntly. Sorry for the language, but your dad and I had an agreement. If something happened to either of us, our kids would inherit our shares, but they'd have to buy out the surviving partner at fair market value. Your dad was very specific about wanting both you and Ryan to benefit from the business. Do you have that in writing? Of course. We updated our partnership agreement 2 years ago when your dad got diagnosed. He insisted on having everything spelled out clearly because he wanted to protect both his kids. Tom goes to his office, a cramped space above the garage, and comes back with a copy of their partnership agreement. Sure enough, it specifies that Robert Mitchell's share would be inherited equally by his children, subject to the buyout provision. But if Ryan inherits everything, I realize, he gets Dad's share without having to split it with me. Exactly. And between you and me, Ryan's been sniffing around here lately, asking about the business finances, talking about modernizing operations. I think he's planning to force me out and sell the place. This hits me hard. Mitchell's Auto Repair isn't just a business, it's Dad's legacy. He built it from nothing, took pride in being known as the most honest mechanic in Southeast Portland. The idea of Ryan selling it off feels like another betrayal. Tom agrees to provide a copy of the partnership agreement and testify about Dad's intentions regarding the business. But the real breakthrough comes when I'm going through Dad's personal effects in the garage at home. Mom said I could take some of his tools as keepsakes, so I'm sorting through his workbench when I find an old notebook tucked behind a coffee can, full of screws. It's Dad's handwriting, messy notes about his estate planning. Most of it is hard to read, but one entry from January 2023 is clear. Talked to Sarah about Will today. Want to make sure both kids treated fairly? Ryan struggling but can't punish Sarah for being responsible. My hands are shaking as I read it. This proves that Dad's original intention was to treat us equally, even while acknowledging Ryan's problems. I flip through more pages and find something even more damning. An entry from March 10th, just 5 days before the will was signed. Ryan, here again asking about money. Jessica crying about losing house. Don't know what to do. Head so fuzzy from meds, can't think straight. And then, on March 14th, Ryan says lawyer coming tomorrow. Don't understand all the papers, but Ryan says this will help his family. Trust him to know what's right. I'm crying as I read this. It's clear evidence that Dad was confused and that Ryan was pressuring him right up until the will was signed. But there's one more entry that stops me cold. It's dated March 20th, 5 days after the will was signed. Can't remember what I signed. Asked Ryan, but he says don't worry about it. Sarah seems upset about something. Should call her. He never did call me. Dad died 3 weeks later, and now I know he was confused and possibly regretful about what he'd done. I immediately call Margaret Chen and schedule an emergency meeting. When I show her the notebook, her eyes light up. Sarah, this is exactly what we need. Your father's own words showing his mental confusion and your brother's pressure tactics. Combined with the medical evidence and the witness issue, we have a strong case. For the first time since this nightmare started, I feel hopeful. But Margaret warns me that filing the contest will make everything worse with my family. Once we file, there's no going back. Your relationship with your mother and brother will likely be permanently damaged. I think about Mom crying, about how lost she looked. I think about my nephews, Ryan's 2 little boys who call me Aunt Sarah and always run to hug me at family gatherings. But then I think about Dad's notebook, about him being confused and pressured into a decision he didn't understand. I think about being dismissed as dramatic for wanting what Dad originally intended to be fair. File it, I tell Margaret. My father deserves to have his true wishes honored. 2 days later, Ryan calls me. His voice is ice cold. Sarah, what the hell is wrong with you? Mom just got served with legal papers. You're actually suing us? I'm contesting Dad's will, Ryan. There's a difference. No, there isn't. You're dragging our family through court because you're greedy and can't accept that Dad made his choice. The accusation of greed stings, especially coming from the brother who talked a dying man into changing his will. Ryan, I found Dad's notebook. I know what you did. There's a long pause. I don't know what you think you found, but Dad made his decision. He wanted to help my family. He was confused and medicated, and you took advantage of that. Prove it, Ryan says, and hangs up. The battle lines are drawn. My own brother just challenged me to prove he manipulated our dying father. Game on, Ryan. Game on. The lawsuit officially begins 3 weeks later, and I quickly learn that Margaret wasn't exaggerating about how nasty these cases can get. Ryan hires his own attorney, David Hoffman, a guy who specializes in defending estate contests, and apparently has a reputation for playing dirty. My first hint of what I'm in for comes when I try to visit Mom. I haven't seen her since that awful night when I found out about the will, and I'm hoping we can somehow work through this as a family. But when I knock on the door, Ryan answers instead. Mom doesn't want to see you right now, he says, blocking the doorway. Ryan, she's my mother. I just want to talk to her. You lost the right to just talk when you decided to sue us. Mom's stressed enough without you making things worse. I can hear Mom's voice in the background, but I can't make out what she's saying. Is she even home? Or are you just deciding for her now? Like, you decided about Dad's will? Ryan's face hardens. You need to leave, Sarah. You're not welcome here anymore. He actually shuts the door in my face, my own brother at my childhood home treating me like a stranger. I sit in my car afterward, crying and wondering if I'm making a terrible mistake. But then I remember Dad's notebook, and I know I'm doing the right thing. The discovery phase of the lawsuit is when things really get nasty. Both sides start demanding documents, depositions, and evidence. Ryan's lawyer requests my financial records, trying to paint me as someone who's financially desperate and contesting the will out of greed. When I see the list of documents they want, 5 years of tax returns, bank statements, credit card records, employment history, I realize they're trying to invade every aspect of my privacy. They're fishing, Margaret explains when I express my concerns. They want to find anything they can use to discredit you, but we have to comply with discovery requests. Going through my financial records is humiliating. Yes, I have credit card debt from helping my parents with medical expenses. Yes, I've missed some payments over the past year. But seeing it all laid out like this, knowing Ryan's lawyer is going through everything, makes me feel exposed and vulnerable. Meanwhile, we're requesting documents from Ryan's side, and what we discover is eye-opening. Ryan's restaurant was in even worse financial shape than I realized. By March 2023, he owed money to 14 different creditors. His house was in pre-foreclosure, and his business bank account had been overdrawn for 3 consecutive months. But the most damaging discovery comes when we get Ryan's phone records. In the 2 weeks leading up to Dad signing the new will, Ryan called or texted Dad 67 times. 67 times in 2 weeks to a man who was barely coherent from cancer treatments. We also discover that Ryan met with the estate attorney 3 times before bringing Dad in to sign the will. 3 strategy sessions where they discussed how to structure the will to give Ryan everything while making it look legitimate. This shows premeditation, Margaret tells me, reviewing the phone records. Your brother didn't just spontaneously ask for help. He orchestrated this whole thing. The depositions are even worse. I have to sit in a conference room while Ryan's lawyer grills me for 6 hours about everything from my nursing salary to my relationship with my parents. David Hoffman is exactly as unpleasant as his reputation suggests, a man in his 50s who treats every question like an attack. Miss Mitchell, isn't it true that you had a strained relationship with your father in his final years? No, that's not true. But you lived in Portland while your parents lived in Beaverton. You didn't see them daily, did you? I saw them several times a week, and I was there for every medical appointment and treatment. Yet your brother was the one helping with household repairs, spending weekends with your parents, bringing their grandchildren over regularly. I can see where this is going. They're trying to paint Ryan as the devoted son and me as the distant daughter who only showed up when it was convenient. Mr. Hoffman, I work 12-hour shifts at a hospital. I arranged my schedule to spend as much time as possible with my parents during Dad's illness. But you never moved back home to help full-time, did you? Unlike your brother, who was there whenever they needed him. The implication is clear. Ryan deserves the inheritance because he was the better child. It's infuriating, but I managed to keep my composure. Ryan's deposition is even more revealing. Under oath, he has to admit to the frequency of his contact with Dad in those final weeks. He has to acknowledge that he discussed his financial problems extensively with Dad during the period when Dad was most medicated and confused. But Ryan is smooth. I'll give him that. He frames everything as a loving son, trying to be honest with his father about his struggles. My dad asked me how things were going, Ryan testifies. I couldn't lie to him. I told him Jessica and I were scared about losing our house, about not being able to provide for our kids. He wanted to help. And did you specifically ask your father to change his will? Margaret asks. Not directly, no. I just told him about our situation. He made his own decision about how to help. It's technically true, but completely misleading. Based on Dad's notebook entries, it's clear Ryan was presenting his problems in a way designed to make Dad feel guilty and obligated to help. The worst part of the deposition comes when Margaret asks Ryan about our relationship. Would you say you and your sister were close? Ryan pauses, and for a moment I see something that might be regret in his eyes. But then it's gone. We used to be, he says, but Sarah's always been jealous of my relationship with Dad. She couldn't accept that Dad and I had a special bond because we both worked with our hands, understood the business side of things. That hurts, really hurts, because there's a grain of truth to it. Dad and Ryan did bond over cars and repairs in a way that Dad and I never did. I was always more interested in books and school, while Ryan followed Dad around the garage from the time he could walk. But to use that against me now, to suggest that my hurt over being completely disinherited is just jealousy, feels like another betrayal. The lowest point comes when Mom is deposed. I haven't seen her in 2 months, and she looks terrible. She's lost weight, her hair is graying more rapidly, and she won't make eye contact with me. Watching my own mother testify about our family's private business in a sterile conference room with lawyers taking notes is heartbreaking. She talks about Dad's illness, his confusion, his worry about both his children. Mrs. Mitchell, did your husband ever express regret about changing his will? Margaret asks gently. Mom starts crying. He was confused about a lot of things toward the end. Sometimes he'd ask me questions about things that had already been decided. Did he ever specifically mention the will after he signed it? He asked me once if Sarah knew about the changes. When I said no, he looked worried. But then Ryan explained that we'd tell her after the funeral, when she was ready to hear it. Even in her testimony, Mom is trying to protect Ryan. But she's also revealing that Dad was concerned about my reaction, which suggests he wasn't entirely comfortable with what he'd done. After Mom's deposition, I try to approach her in the parking lot. Mom, please, can't we talk about this? She looks at me with such sadness. Sarah, why are you doing this to our family? Your father is gone, and instead of grieving together, we're fighting in court. Mom, Dad didn't understand what he was signing. Ryan took advantage of him when he was sick and confused. Ryan is trying to save his family. His children could have lost their home. And what about me? What about what Dad originally wanted? Mom gets into Ryan's truck. Apparently he's been driving her everywhere now. And doesn't answer. That night I call my best friend Jessica, not Ryan's wife. Confusingly, they have the same name, and break down completely. I feel like I'm losing my entire family over this, I tell her through tears. Maybe I should just drop the lawsuit and try to rebuild relationships. Jessica, who's known me since nursing school, is blunt. Sarah, if you back down now, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Your dad was manipulated when he was vulnerable. That's not okay, no matter who did it. She's right, but it doesn't make the emotional cost any easier to bear. The breaking point comes when someone, I'm pretty sure it's Ryan, starts spreading stories about the lawsuit around town. Portland isn't that big, especially in the close-knit community where my parents lived for 30 years. I start getting looks at the grocery store, whispered conversations that stop when I walk by. Someone even approaches me at work. Aren't you the nurse who's suing her own mother? A patient's family member asks. That's really sad, honey. Families should stick together. I realize Ryan is trying to turn public opinion against me, painting me as the greedy daughter who's attacking her grieving mother. It's a smart strategy, and it's working. But the worst comes when I run into my nephew, Ryan's 8-year-old son Tyler, at a park near my condo. He's with his other grandmother, Jessica's mom, and when he sees me, his face lights up. Aunt Sarah! He runs over to hug me, and for a moment, everything feels normal again. But then Jessica's mom catches up to him, and her expression is cold. "Tyler, come away from her," she says, actually pulling him back. "But it's Aunt Sarah," Tyler says, confused. "Your Aunt Sarah she's not part of the family right now." Tyler looks between us, not understanding. "Why not?" Jessica's mom doesn't answer, just takes Tyler's hand and walks away. But Tyler looks back at me over his shoulder, and I can see he's upset and confused. That night, I lie awake wondering if any inheritance is worth destroying my relationship with my nephews, with my mother, with the only family I have left. But then I think about Dad's notebook entry. Trust him to know what's right. Dad trusted Ryan to do the right thing, and Ryan betrayed that trust. If I give up now, I'm not just losing my inheritance. I'm letting Ryan get away with manipulating a dying man, and I'm teaching my nephews that sometimes the bad guys win. I can't live with that. The trial begins on a cold February morning, exactly 1 year after Dad's death. The Multnomah County Courthouse feels imposing and formal, nothing like the warm, family environment where this dispute should have been resolved. Margaret Chen has prepared me well, but I'm still nervous as we enter the courtroom. Judge Patricia Hernandez will be deciding our case. Margaret says she's fair but tough, with a no-nonsense attitude toward family disputes. Ryan sits at the defendant's table with his lawyer, and for the first time in months, we make eye contact. He looks tired, older somehow, and I wonder if this process has been as hard on him as it's been on me. But then I remember Tyler being pulled away from me in the park, and my resolve hardens. Mom is in the gallery, sitting behind Ryan's table. She still won't look at me directly, but I can see the stress of the past year has taken a toll on her. She's lost more weight, and her hands shake slightly as she holds her purse. The opening statements lay out the battle lines clearly. Margaret presents me as a devoted daughter who's fighting to honor her father's true wishes, while David Hoffman paints me as a greedy sibling who can't accept that her brother was the favored child. "Your Honor," Margaret begins, "this case is about a vulnerable man who was manipulated during his final months by someone he trusted. Robert Mitchell was suffering from cancer, undergoing chemotherapy, and taking powerful medications that affected his cognitive abilities. During this vulnerable period, his son Ryan Mitchell engaged in a systematic campaign of pressure and manipulation to convince his father to disinherit his daughter completely." Hoffman's opening is predictably different. "Your Honor, this is simply a case of sibling rivalry taken to an unfortunate extreme. Robert Mitchell made a conscious decision to help the child who needed it most. His son Ryan, who was facing financial ruin and the potential loss of his home while caring for 2 young children. The plaintiff cannot accept that her father chose to help her brother instead of her." Our first witness is Dr. Patricia Williams, Dad's oncologist. Despite her initial hesitation, she agreed to testify, and her medical testimony is devastating to Ryan's case. "Mr. Mitchell was experiencing significant cognitive impairment during his final months," she testifies. "The combination of brain metastases from his lung cancer, chemotherapy treatments, and high-dose pain medications created a condition we call chemo brain, difficulty with memory, concentration, and decision-making." Margaret asks, "Doctor, in your professional opinion, would Mr. Mitchell have been capable of making complex legal decisions during this period?" I documented concerns about his decision-making capacity in February and March 2023. I specifically recommended that he avoid making major financial or legal decisions during this time. On cross-examination, Hoffman tries to minimize Dr. Williams's testimony, suggesting that Dad had good days and bad days, but the medical evidence is clear. Dad was not operating with full mental capacity when he signed the new will. Tom Rodriguez testifies next, explaining the partnership agreement and Dad's clear intentions about the auto shop. "Bob was very specific about wanting both his kids to benefit from the business," Tom says. "He talked about it all the time, how proud he was of both Sarah and Ryan, how he wanted to leave them something to remember him by." But the most powerful testimony comes from an unexpected source. Janet Morrison, one of the nurses who cared for Dad during his final hospital stay, reaches out to us just before trial. "I remember Mr. Mitchell," she tells Margaret during a pre-trial interview. "He was confused a lot of the time, but he kept asking about Sarah. He seemed worried that he'd done something to hurt her, but he couldn't remember what." When Janet testifies, she describes conversations with Dad during his final weeks. "He told me he had 2 children, and he loved them both equally. But he seemed distressed about something involving his daughter. He kept saying, 'I hope Sarah understands. I hope I did the right thing.' It was clear he was troubled about some decision he'd made." Ryan's face is pale as Janet testifies. This is evidence that Dad was having regrets about the will change, just as his notebook suggested. The turning point comes when Margaret introduces Dad's notebook into evidence. She reads key entries aloud, and I watch the judge's expression change as she hears Dad's own words about his confusion and Ryan's pressure. When Margaret reads the entry about Dad trusting Ryan to know what's right, you can feel the courtroom atmosphere shift. Even Hoffman looks uncomfortable. Ryan's testimony is his chance to defend himself, but under Margaret's cross-examination, the truth starts to emerge. "Mr. Mitchell, you visited your father 67 times in the 2 weeks before he signed the new will. That's nearly 5 times per day. Would you say that's normal?" "I was spending time with my dying father. Sue me." "And during these visits, you discussed your financial problems extensively, didn't you?" "My father asked about my life. I was honest with him." "You told him repeatedly that you might lose your house, that your children might be homeless, correct?" Ryan shifts uncomfortably. "I told him the truth about our situation." "And you knew your father was on pain medication that affected his thinking?" "He was sick, but he wasn't incompetent." Margaret pulls out phone records. "You called him at 2:47 a.m. on March 12th. Why would you call a dying man in the middle of the night?" Ryan hesitates. I was upset. Jessica and I had been fighting about money. I needed to talk to someone." "And what did you talk about during this 2:47 a.m. phone call?" "I don't remember specifically." "Let me refresh your memory. Your father made a note in his journal the next day. Ryan called crying about losing everything. Don't know how to help him. Can't think straight." Does that sound familiar? The courtroom is silent as Ryan realizes he's been caught. He called his dying, medicated father in the middle of the night to cry about his financial problems, adding to Dad's stress and confusion. But the most damaging testimony is still to come. Margaret calls the attorney who drafted the new will, Stephen Walsh. Walsh is clearly uncomfortable being involved in this dispute, but he's required to testify about the circumstances of the will signing. "Mr. Walsh, who contacted you about drafting a new will for Robert Mitchell?" "Ryan Mitchell called me. He said his father wanted to update his estate plan." "Did you meet with Robert Mitchell before drafting the will?" "No. Ryan provided me with the instructions for what his father wanted." "So you drafted a will completely disinheriting one child based solely on the other child's instructions, without ever speaking to your actual client?" Walsh looks deeply uncomfortable. "Ryan assured me these were his father's wishes." "And when Robert Mitchell came to sign the will, how did he seem to you?" "He was frail, clearly ill. He seemed confused about some of the details." "Confused how?" "He asked several times why Sarah wasn't getting anything. Ryan kept explaining that this was what he wanted, but Mr. Mitchell seemed uncertain." This is devastating testimony. The attorney who drafted the will is admitting that Dad seemed confused and uncertain about disinheriting me completely. "Did you recommend that Mr. Mitchell wait and think about this decision?" I probably should have, but Ryan was very insistent that time was critical due to his father's declining health." Margaret lets that hang in the air. Ryan pressured not just Dad, but also the attorney, to rush through a decision that Dad wasn't sure about. When it's Hoffman's turn to present Ryan's defense, he tries to paint a picture of a devoted son helping his family in crisis. He calls Jessica, Ryan's wife, to testify about their financial struggles and Ryan's devotion to his parents. Jessica is clearly uncomfortable being there, and I feel bad for her. She's been caught in the middle of this family war, and it's not her fault that Ryan manipulated Dad. Mrs. Mitchell, can you describe your family's financial situation in early 2023? It was terrible, Jessica admits. We were behind on our mortgage, the restaurant was failing, and I was pregnant with our second child. We were scared we'd lose everything. And how did your husband handle this stress? He was doing everything he could to save our family. He worked extra shifts at the auto shop, tried to get loans, talked to his parents about maybe helping us. But on cross-examination, Margaret gets Jessica to admit that Ryan spent hours on the phone with Dad, often coming home upset after conversations about the family's financial problems. Mrs. Mitchell, did your husband ever say anything about changing his father's will? Jessica hesitates. He mentioned that his dad was talking about ways to help us. And did he specifically mention that his father was considering leaving everything to your family? He said his dad was worried about us losing our house. It's not a direct admission, but it suggests Ryan was discussing the will changes with Jessica before they happened. The final witness is Mom, and this is the hardest part of the trial for me. She looks so fragile on the witness stand, and I hate that our family dispute has brought her to this point. Hoffman keeps his questioning gentle, focusing on Dad's love for Ryan and his grandchildren, his worry about Ryan's financial situation, and his desire to help his son. Mrs. Mitchell, did your husband ever express doubt about his decision to change the will? He was confused about a lot of things toward the end, Mom says carefully, but he loved both his children. But Margaret's cross-examination reveals more than Mom probably intended to share. Mrs. Mitchell, you testified that your husband was confused in his final months. Can you give us specific examples? Mom starts crying softly. He would ask me the same questions multiple times. Sometimes he didn't recognize his surroundings. The medication made him very disoriented. And during this period of confusion, your son Ryan was visiting frequently to discuss his financial problems. Ryan was trying to be a good son. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm going to read you an entry from your husband's notebook. Can't remember what I signed? Asked Ryan, but he says don't worry about it. Sarah seems upset about something. Should call her. Do you remember your husband being confused about documents he had signed? Mom breaks down completely. He asked me several times what papers he had signed recently. I told him Ryan was handling everything, that he didn't need to worry. And did he ever call Sarah to discuss these concerns? No, Mom whispers. He died before he could. The courtroom is completely silent. Even Hoffman looks shaken by Mom's testimony. After closing arguments, Judge Hernandez takes the case under advisement. The waiting period is agonizing. 3 weeks of not knowing whether I've destroyed my family relationships for nothing. When we return to court for the decision, the courtroom is packed. Word has gotten around about our family dispute, and apparently it's drawn some local attention. Judge Hernandez doesn't waste time with preliminaries. This case presents troubling facts about the vulnerability of elderly individuals and the potential for undue influence by family members. While adult children certainly have the right to discuss their problems with their parents, there is a line between seeking support and exploiting a vulnerable person's love and concern. My heart is pounding as she continues. The evidence shows that Robert Mitchell was suffering from significant cognitive impairment during the period when he executed the new will. The medical testimony is clear that he was not operating with full mental capacity. Additionally, the evidence of Ryan Mitchell's systematic pressure campaign, including 67 contacts in 2 weeks and a middle-of-the-night phone call to discuss financial problems, demonstrates a pattern of behavior designed to influence a vulnerable person. She pauses, looking directly at Ryan. Most troubling is the testimony from the drafting attorney that Robert Mitchell seemed confused and uncertain about disinheriting his daughter completely, yet was pressured to sign anyway. The court finds that the will dated March 15, 2023, was executed under undue influence and does not reflect Robert Mitchell's true testamentary intent. I can barely breathe. She's ruling in my favor. The court hereby invalidates the March 2023 will and reinstates Robert Mitchell's previous will, which divided his estate equally between his two children. Additionally, given the egregious nature of the undue influence, the court orders Ryan Mitchell to pay his sister's attorney fees. The gavel comes down, and it's over. I've won. But looking around the courtroom, I don't feel victorious. Mom is crying, Ryan looks devastated, and our family is more broken than ever. Outside the courthouse, Margaret congratulates me, but I'm struggling with mixed emotions. "You did the right thing, Sarah," she says. "Your father's true wishes are being honored." Ryan and Mom leave without speaking to me, and I watch them drive away feeling more alone than ever. Over the next few months, the practical aspects of the judgment get sorted out. The house will be sold, and Mom will use her half to buy a smaller place. Dad's share of the auto shop gets divided between Ryan and me, though Tom Rodriguez decides to buy us both out, rather than deal with the ongoing family drama. The financial victory helps. I can pay off my student loans and buy a bigger place, but the emotional cost feels enormous. The turning point comes 6 months later, on what would have been Dad's 67th birthday. I drive to the cemetery and find Mom already there, sitting by Dad's grave with fresh flowers. "Mom," I say quietly, not wanting to startle her. She looks up, and for the first time in over a year, she doesn't look away. "I come here every week," she says. "I talk to him about everything that's happened." I sit down beside her on the small bench next to Dad's headstone. "What do you tell him?" "That I'm sorry, that I should have protected him better when he was sick and confused, that I should have stood up to Ryan when I knew something wasn't right." We sit in silence for a while, both of us crying. "Mom, I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted Dad's real wishes to be honored." "I know," she says quietly. And deep down, I knew Ryan was pressuring him. I was just so scared of losing my family that I went along with it. "You haven't lost me, Mom. You never could." We hold hands, sitting by Dad's grave, and for the first time in over a year, I feel like I have my mother back. Ryan is a different story. He's still angry, still convinced that I destroyed our family out of greed. His restaurant finally closed, and he's working full-time at another auto shop now. Jessica filed for divorce 6 months after the trial, taking the kids and moving back to her parents' house in California. I've tried reaching out to Ryan several times, but he won't respond to my calls or texts. The loss of his marriage, his business, and now his relationship with me has left him bitter and isolated. But there's hope. Last week, Tyler, my 8-year-old nephew, called me from Jessica's phone. "Aunt Sarah, why don't you come to family things anymore?" "It's complicated, sweetie. Your dad and I are having some grown-up problems." "But you're still my aunt, right?" "Always, Tyler. Always." Jessica gets back on the phone. "Sarah, I know this is awkward, but Tyler misses you. And honestly, so do I. What Ryan did wasn't right, and I'm sorry you got caught up in our financial problems." It's a start. Maybe Tyler and his little brother don't have to lose their aunt permanently because of their father's mistakes. As I'm finishing this story, I want to be clear about something. I didn't contest Dad's will for money. I did it because what happened to him was wrong. When someone is vulnerable and scared and confused, taking advantage of them is never okay, even if that person is family. Dad trusted Ryan to do the right thing, and Ryan betrayed that trust. He manipulated a dying man's love for his family to benefit himself, and then tried to paint me as the villain when I fought back. The money I received from the settlement has helped me rebuild my life. I bought a house, paid off my debts, and even started a small scholarship fund at the nursing school in Dad's memory. But more importantly, I proved that Dad's true intentions mattered, that his voice couldn't be silenced by manipulation and pressure. Mom and I have dinner together every Sunday now. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly, talking through the pain and confusion of the past year. She started seeing a counselor to help her process her grief and guilt over what happened. Ryan and I may never repair our relationship, and that breaks my heart. But I sleep well at night knowing I fought for what was right, even when it was hard, even when it cost me almost everything. Dad's notebook is framed on my wall now, open to the page where he wrote about wanting to treat both his children fairly. It reminds me every day that sometimes doing the right thing means standing up to the people you love most, even when they try to silence you. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 29 years old, and I sued my own family to honor my father's memory. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because family isn't just about blood. It's about honoring the people we love, protecting the vulnerable, and standing up for what's right, even when the whole world is telling you to just let it go. Dad would be proud of me for fighting for the truth. And in the end, that's all that really matters.